Well, good morning, everybody. How are we doing? This is Jeremiah. We are having a webinar, very special kind of webinar. Ask us anything. Absolutely. Though we sort of have a generalized theme of, irrigation troubleshooting, particularly if, it's our worry of, well, gee, what if people aren't feeling very questionable? What if they don't, what if nobody asks us questions? So, but just gives us a little bit of a theme, so we're prepped to show a lot of irrigation troubleshooting, and you're welcome to ask us literally anything about anything, but ideally it'd be nice to stay somewhat on topic of irrigation and irrigation troubleshooting. In case you're wondering, well, how are you going to ask us those questions? Well, that's the little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Stands for questions and answers. So obviously you're going to want to pull that up right away so you can start to get your questions in. And note, you're also going to be able to see the answers that we type to other people's questions. So I'm sure we're going to get more questions asked than we're going to be able to answer live. And so that way, I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions that'll be just answered with what we type. But anyway, it's going to be a super lot of fun. It is being recorded as well, so you'll have it to refer to. That being said, I think I'm done with all my little prep work. I am ready to hand this off to Jake to take us away.
All right, thanks, Jer. Welcome everybody. This is going to be, like Jer said, super riveting. So, if you don't want to hear me talk or watch me talk about all my little prep things and what I kind of got ready for this, please submit your guys' questions. Um, this one's a tricky one. I'll be honest. It is irrigation troubleshooting. This is us. We are going to be the guys that answer all your questions today. Um, the tricky thing about this webinar in my mind is, you don't know something's wrong until it's wrong. And how did you get there kind of a thing. So trying to replicate and recreate some of these things, I think we got enough ready to show you guys. Maybe it's something that's hitting home, but it's a tricky one to replicate. So, um, as we go through things, if it does not break or doesn't work the way that I tested it, we're gonna dive in together and try to figure out what was going on. So, anyways, I want to start out with, as we get into stuff, the proper troubleshooting techniques that we take. Maybe proper is in the eye of the beholder, but the steps that we take when we receive irrigation tickets or tickets in general, um, a lot of the different things included, which this is not a catch-all list here. This is just some of the more prominent ones, but anything from uh, duplicate equipment and you're seeing multiple nozzle sizes and stuff like that to no flow for areas, all kinds of different symbol deals, whether it's the scale, the shape, the text, anything and everything about those things is always a challenge. Things about the schedule, which I'll be honest, I don't know that I have something prepped for schedules exactly because that one was the hardest one for me to try to recreate. But um, in and out of all the different tools, the circuiting and changing your equipment and understanding those calculations and how it's getting what it's getting. Then there's obviously a few tips and tricks that we can always throw at you. So hopefully you'll be ready for those. Um, Throughout any of this, please just keep submitting those questions so that we know where you guys want help. So with that in mind, we are going to start with the resources that are available to you on our website. Okay, so I'm gonna cancel out of this guy. We'll get over to our landeffects.com homepage here. Um, this is more just to help us help you kind of a thing, right? So when you're running into issues, please send in your drawing files and spell those issues out for us. We might seem like we are mind readers, and we are really, really good at that a lot of times. But if you can help point us to the place or specific location in the drawing that is you know you're having troubles with, giving us some steps of things that you've tried, letting us know the resources that you've looked at that weren't clear. Those kind of things really help us understand what it is that you were doing or have been doing to either get the result or trying to troubleshoot the result. So on our webpage under support, and this is, I'm not going to go into this because we just had an awesome webinar on our training resources that go into all the different terminology and stuff that we use here. But here is where our knowledge base is for issues. Submitting a ticket. These things are all right here, but all of our resources for the power tips and the webinars that go over any of those subjects as well are right here. So being able to submit a ticket and being able to check, you know, are you up to date? Seeing some trending topics. These knowledge base articles right here are really, really awesome, especially as we get into this. Um, I don't want to quote Spider-Man too much, but with great power comes great responsibility. There's a lot that goes into the irrigation side of things. So there's a lot of potential that something might go wrong. So there is a lot of resources based on the different things that you might be doing. So check it out. Search the web, look at what you got, resources here. Um, the files that we need from an irrigation perspective, obviously the drawing that it's happening in, and the project data file and the preference set are very, very crucial. And I say that because as we get into looking at these symbols and stuff like that, we need to know the data that's tied to these things. So there's a lot of little working parts underneath the hood that we need to be able to look at. And hopefully, by showing you some of these things today, it'll give you a sense about what we're looking for as we go through things. So before we fully get started, do we want to answer anything that might be coming up or where people are guiding us today, Jer?
Well, we already got a few really great questions. So, I mean, if you're ready, we could definitely dive on in.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Um, yeah, I mean, first is a really easy one. For the schedule, he was wondering he wants the quantities of pipe by size.
That is awesome. So the irrigation schedule in general obviously has a lot of options. I think it's good to note as we're starting out here, obviously we're not doing a beginner irrigation thing, so it's assumed that you understand what you have available from your pipe data, you know, setting up your pipe data defaults and stuff like that for what the system is producing. So this does sort of uh, overlap a little bit with, hey, I've got weird sizes that are actually showing up that I don't want, you know, all that. All of these things are managed in our pipe data. So as we say we don't want to use certain pipe sizes, this is where that's stored. But let's assume that we've got everything set up the way that we want. In order to get a list of sizes, we do have to size the system. Okay, so if I have not sized the system, I will not get the actual sizes available in the schedule, but I will go ahead and click my irrigation schedule button because I have sized the system. I already have a schedule in here. It's asking me to regen. I'm going to say no. So we can get to this dialog box here. So the schedule is broken out into all of the different equipment types. And under valves, equipment, and pipe, you'll actually notice that there's a little dot, dot, dot. And if I expand him, this guy right here, list equipment pipe by size. If he's not checked, we will get a single line item in the schedule. Otherwise, if he's checked and we've sized the system, then as we run that, you'll see it'll obviously match that guy right there. But I will get the actual sizes of pipe from lateral line through main line and different classes. Great question.
Well, fantastic. Yeah, then we had a another easy question is for the valve callouts that if you've deleted a valve, how do you kind of renumber them?
Oh, sweet. That's a great question. I'm gonna actually, so this plan that I've got going on here, um, I've I've broken it enough to where I'm gonna put a pin in that question and I'll show you after one other thing. So um, we might be working on a project with another firm, maybe another coworker in a different office, maybe just a straight up other computer that we're working on, and our license, our data itself is not shared between the computers. Obviously, our project setting up a project for the drawing that we're doing is super, super crucial, as that's going to hold all of our equipment. If I don't receive that project data, let's just take this into a tech support example, and you give me this drawing with all of the symbols placed and everything, that's great. I can see the symbols. Anybody who opens a DWG can, but I do not know what that valve is. Hopefully we kind of have a best practice of as we start a project and we've added all of our equipment that we run a schedule for entire pallet, because that's going to give us a nice list of and this one isn't because this is just from my plan, but it would give us a nice running list of all equipment in the project. So I do suggest that as you start an irrigation design and you've added all your equipment, you run a schedule entire palette so that you can actually refer back to anything that you may or may not have in the plan again and see where that was and what kind of equipment that you picked. So in this case, I open this up and for whatever reason, I actually don't have any of these valves in my plan. How do I get that back? There's going to be a command that I refer to quite a few times throughout today. And that is if you type LOL, enter, and then EE, enter, this is actually going to prompt you to select an object. And what this is going to do is it's going to give us information about that particular block and any data tied to him. I'm expanding my command line out so that you can actually see sort of into this list here of what we actually clicked. And while I don't expect you to know all of this stuff, because I sure don't, we can see a couple specific things that is tied to this specific symbol. I know that this is a 2-inch Buckner 950, the Superior 950 brass remote control valve. So the system is logging that information within that symbol. So I'm able to actually go and say new remote valve and find that actual that deal here. So I'll go to Superior, I'll find the 950. There he is. That's my 950 that I picked. And I'll say add to project. And now he shows up in the list. Now, what's nice about this, and as a confirmation, while we're in this manager, I can actually select him and click highlight, and it will, through the plan where it can, or where applicable, it'll actually highlight that. So now I know that that is actually linked to that piece of equipment now. So um, so now these valves are actually being registered by the system. Now we're gonna unpin that question, Jer, and show this off. So maybe I did have a station right in the middle here that got removed. The most important thing that we can understand with how we modify a plan is that the system is looking at every little piece from a fitting to the pipe to the piece of equipment that it's tied to. And all of those have little bits of data tied so that the system knows how to go home, how to follow and connect things together. If I simply delete this valve out of the plan, well, now I have all these little orphan pipes that are going to start throwing errors at me if I start using tools like our move piped equipment and I click on this valve. Well, I'm going to get some of these errors. So I don't want to do that. Okay. I absolutely want to be able to get me back here. I want to be able to remove him off clean and appropriately. So we have under our station tools a delete station tool. And if I were to click on that valve, it'll actually say, hey, pipe and heads, or everything including the valve, which is what I want. So I'll say okay. And the system will automatically remove him out, including the call out. Now, you'll notice that I've got some other sneaky things in here. I got random pipes that are actually connecting through here now. I'm like, what in the world happened? Okay. The uh, the system does not like if you've already piped to a piece of equipment to take that guy and copy him and use him somewhere else. Because that head, or sorry, that valve right there, the system knows that there's pieces of pipe tied to that, and those pipes want to follow where that head is. So I have all kinds of messed up issues if I start copying um, these heads because now the pipe thinks that every one that I click on is the appropriate deal. Okay, so I'm royally messing up my plan right now. Um, and how do we fix that kind of a thing? If you've copied any kind of piped equipment, one, that's just a big no-no in general. But if you have, you've got to remove the pipe and you've got to repipe it, unfortunately. But we have the tools to be able to actually delete station, click on a piece of pipe, and just say, you know what, get rid of the pipe only. Leave everything else the way that it was so that I can actually grab my tools and repipe to everything. So I am in a hurry and repipe this because I want to, seamlessly be able to show you the valve call out thing. And this is the nature of having a file so messed up and trying to answer other questions. So give me 1 second. Is there any other questions as we start to do that call out one, Jer?
Oh, we got a good number here. Christian, for instance, asks if there's a way to link multiple details to equipment. And that is currently pending. Right now, you can set a single detail to any piece of equipment. And it's actually this year we are hoping to add the ability to assign multiple details. So
Yep.
hopefully you'll see that happen this year, Christian.
Yeah. We had a really cool meeting just a little bit ago about a restructure of a database so that it'll make it a lot easier for us. So that'll be fun.
Hmm.
All right. So I think I'm ready now to answer your question. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that this valve again. Now, what's kind of cool, again, where the system's tying all this stuff together, these callouts that I've already placed are referencing the information for the valve that it's actually being called out to. So any kind of work that I do with these tools, like if I wanted to highlight that station, I don't have to click on the valve to do so. I can actually click on the call out and the call out will actually highlight the valve that it is pointing to. If I want to size that valve, I don't have to click size pipe and click on the valve. If it's called out, I can actually click on the call out to do that. So for delete station, I should be able to just click on that call out and we'll do everything including the valve. And now we're good. So you'll notice that obviously it looks broken, but that's literally a dashed piece. But if I use my move piped equipment tool now, you can see that the system isn't breaking that piece of pipe because it stitched it back together properly. Okay. So now that I've, taken that valve out, and maybe I'll do one more. We'll make it complicated. We'll take out this one right here. Okay. So now I've got two holes that I've got to fill. Our valve callout tool, if I go ahead and click on any one of the callouts or any one of the valves, I can expand this little information bar, and I can see that I've got a couple little spots here. I can simply click, if I wanted to shrink the numbers in, I can simply click this guy here and renumber the valve shown, and the system's going to automatically fill in the gaps to where they were. If I wanted to, for whatever reason, still give myself a gap at some point, he's number 4, but maybe I want him to be, starting with number 5 or something like that. I can choose a new number, and I can increment the other valves. And when I do that, the system's going to automatically shift everything that way. Hopefully that answered that.
Very cool. And that leads us right into our next one. We've got another valve call out question. Robert wants to separate his valves with a T prefix for trees and an S prefix for shrubs. He's wondering if that's possible.
Yeah, for sure. Now, we would consider that this functionality, it is tied to the thought of controllers being there might be multiple controllers on a plan that has that. So we would be putting in a little letter identifier here under the controller section, but you can absolutely throw in that prefix there. And right here in the dot, dot, dot is our delimiter. So if we wanted it to be nice and tight here and just be a T1, then you would do that. If you wanted to include a hyphen or a period so that it was a T dash, then you could do that. We'll go ahead and just do that guy here. What's nice is that once you actually change one of those, the system automatically adds it to the list for what it is. So maybe we go ahead and say add new, and we do S for shrub, and it knows that S1 is available. So we can go ahead and say okay. Now I can come over to this guy and I can choose T, and the system already knows that there's an increment already happening here. So we'll say okay, and then go over to this one and we can say T3. Now what should happen is if you did happen to say, you know what, T1 is actually now T2, the same thing would apply, is we can increment those other valves, and the system's going to keep track of where all of those are in place. So you can absolutely do that. And then what's nice is when you run your valve schedule, we'll just drop him in. I like checking all of these for all kinds of reasons. Go ahead and plop him in there. You can see that it's going to bundle those all together on the schedule that way. So what's next?
Looking pretty good. Then this will be maybe a little bit of a tricky one. Get your thinking cap on. But drip tubing. And so this attendee specifically says, what's the best way to show 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch drip tubing snaking around to the planting? Because there's not a spline option.
Yep, that is a fair question. A couple thoughts come to mind. As you can see, this one is actually using single length drip tubing. And there's a lot of ways to, graphically show it. I am a very strong believer in the detail showing the way that you should be going in and out of plants. from like a how you actually want it laid out, and then graphically on the plan show it by either maybe it's a hatch, so an area for drip line or area for drip emitter. If you're focusing on just including, let me get over to a plan that has some plants here. If you're just wanting to show the flow for a specific area, then our area for drip emitter is a great way to just drop in a hatch altogether and show it non-plot, or set it to non-plot so that it doesn't show. Um, and what this would allow you to do is just graphically with a polyline, you weave it out in and out so that it just looks the way that you want it, but the calculations are actually happening on the hatched portion of it. So that's how I would personally do it, so that it's how you want it to read, but the system's calculating it based on what's there, and you don't have to worry about trying to connect it. However, let's get into a shrubby area. This is a good enough area right here. Let's see if I've got some area or some drip line here. If I take my single length drip line, remember that I do have the arc option. So if I were to, start from over here, and I'm placing it this way, and I wanted to snake in and out of this, it does take some practice. But if I press A, it says, hey, where's the next point? So I'm actually picking the end points, the tangent points, so that I can pick my midpoint of my arc. So if I was going to go around this tree like this, I might go here to start my actual curve, right? And then I can press A, and I could press here and pick the midpoint that kind of is in that tangent, right? And then I can press A, and I can press here. And if I wanted to, and again, it does take a little bit of practice, but at any point I could undo and kind of restart that. So there is a way, to get it the way that you want it. So I'll go straight here and then arc around that point, straight, and then arc around this point, right? So there is a way to do that with the drip line tool, and then you can connect it into your pipe. But this drip line by default will be the half inch or the tubing of the actual stuff there. As far as showing 3/4 and maybe you're showing blank tubing in between, that's where your pipe data comes into play. And I always say drop it into your last class. Typically, we're not using all of these. Um, Pick maybe a poly pipe class. Maybe that's not the right one. Where are we at here? Polyline, this guy. Where we have half inch and 3/4, and remove the rest of those sizes so that this is the size list that you got. Change this to blank drip line tubing and say okay. So what's nice about this is now you can pipe with your lateral tool and press the number 9 key, and it'll switch right over to your blank tubing, and you can actually go wherever you want to, and then go back to your single length drip line and connect onto that and continue, however you were wanting to go for that. So that's would be my workflow, and I've done that quite a few times, especially just to show little bits of spirals in there. But that does bring me to something that I want to show off, just because I don't know that a lot of people are using it or are aware of it. We have a drip ring piece of equipment, and it is awesome. Very cool, where I can customize or actually pick from the drip tubing that I actually want. Once I pick the the emitter spacing and the flow, a dialog box is going to pop up here and allow me to set up actual drip rings. So if I wanted to do just a little spiral of stuff, I could say, you know what, my inner diameter is no more than 12 inches. Actually, no, let's do 24 inches. The spacing of those rings, we'll do it 8 inches. And I want, X amount of emitters total, you know, and the system's going to automatically wrap up all of that in a total length and a total flow based on those things. And I can pick a symbol. I can customize a symbol and save it in. I've actually saved this little guy in here to make it look like a little spiral. And I can say, okay. And so now I've got, well, I put a bunch of these things in here. I've got this drip ring guy that I can, oops, he was the wrong one. I did the 912. That I can see where his pattern's going to go, and I can actually apply him and have a little spiral that I can just pipe to and have it accounted for that way too. So anyways, a little bit of a
And
tangent there.
and well, and also, but also another thought is, we've talked about adding a spline option too for when placing drip line, and so that's something that we're also hoping to add at some point.
Cool.
But leading us to the next one, I know you have that drawing that you were preparing that you're really liking, but the drip line and the drip line, oh yeah, that
The
guy.
zero flow guy.
Uh-huh, but specifically what Jacob here mentions, and so we can certainly show this as well as, the related topics in there. But having the problem where he pipes a lateral pipe into a drip line area, but then it doesn't seem to be recognized. And so, but the trick they've found is by using move piped equipment, that seems to make it recognized. But just kind of wanted to show specifically what the verify laterals does
Uh,
in correcting that, but also how it can get unconnected or get pointed to the wrong drip line area. And I thought that might be nice to show.
yeah, and I'm going to do it right here just so that it's quicker on the fly for sure. Um, so let me go ahead and grab some area for drip line here. I've got some in this project, and let me place it. Okay. Now, are we using pipe transition points or open pipe ends? It doesn't matter technically, but
It is
um,
better to use PTPs.
I was gonna say I prefer PTPs. We call them PTPs, pipe transition points, because um, the I think of it as connect the dots. So I'll grab this pipe transition point and put him in. What's nice about the pipe transition points is I have this nice little guide as far as where I might need to stub up if I'm doing too long of a run. That's number one why I like it. Number two is I don't have to actually create an extra stub into the drip areas. I actually get to just continue to pipe to these and I don't have to leave any ends. So that is the other very good reason. Otherwise, I'm sure there's on the back coding end of things a lot cleaner validations and stuff that it can do. So I'll go ahead and I will pipe these guys really quick. The other reason that I like it too is now I can use, as I'm piping, head auto snap and press H to turn that on and very quickly know that I'm clicking into or onto an area that I know I want to connect, so I can just do that. Now don't judge my piping paths here, but come around here, we'll drop down. And I do want to not go into the parking lot. So there we go. So I've piped all those things. Now, if I were to use my highlight station tool and see, well, nothing's actually there. Like nothing's actually highlighting these areas. And so this is, I think, where it starts is, hey, why aren't these being picked up? Well, the system actually needs to know where to look and verify. If I verify things, the system automatically, now I know these are not connected to valves, so I'm not going to highlight them, but the system just now looked through and checked all of these areas. And if I were to highlight this guy again, you can see he's now being picked up. So verify is like number one on the list to just double check that you got things looking in the right area. Because I might have, um, moved something in another area. And if I highlight the station again, well, we're good, right? But if and verify would obviously catch that area again. But if I were to move this in, I believe, after the fact and like readjust and check, he's now not picked up again, right? So it's a little bit of a juxtaposition on when and how I'm putting stuff in that the system needs to just double check back and refresh what it's looking at. Is there anything else I need to say on that?
I mean, I think that's good. I have to admit I was looking on the other screen, so I wasn't
Right.
fully
Well,
following.
then my answer was perfect. So,
Um, but
can I show
oh wait, if you want to go
the?
back to that real quick
Oh
though,
yeah, yeah.
just because just another question very quickly. Just Martha was just asking about, does the area for drip line give you the same quantity takeoff for length as the single length drip line? So just simply showing that real quick
Yeah,
while you have
great
this.
question. The answer is yes and no, because single link drip line is literally counting up the linear feet that you have drawn. The area for drip line, it does base it off of a set spacing, emitter spacing and row spacing. So um, we can get the output from the drip line quantity as length. So if I do show this, this is a total linear feet, but that is based off of 18-inch row spacing and 18 inches apart. So if I were to simply edit this equipment and change his row spacing, not only would it update the flows in all of the different areas, but if I were to regen this schedule, it's going to automatically increase my lengths because I have now just added more tubing in there. So it is, I like this a lot better because it is a more all-inclusive, consistent deal. But if you know you're going to be gaps and other random spacing in areas, then single length would just still be the length of what you draw. So can I
Great.
go over to this
Oh
file?
yes, yes. Now we can go over here. Yeah.
All right. So along the same lines of verify not being able to catch something, maybe you've piped everything properly and you did verify it and it is landing in, you got a pipe transition point in the area. You've redrawn things and it's still just saying, hey, you've got some stuff not connected to uh, valves. Like, how in the world do you check that out? Now, this is absolutely most common with area for drip line and area for drip emitter, um, just because it's looking for other things. If it's a head and it's saying that it's not connected to a valve, it's more than likely you broke the pipe or it's looking in a different location from a Z elevation perspective. So this specific thing is absolutely more common in the hatch realm, and we'll show you why. So it found this little area right here. It found this little area over here, and it found this little area over here as not connected. Now, I have redrawn these areas and I have put pipe transition points in all of these areas, and it's still just simply not picking it up. So I'm going to show you a couple little tools and that hopefully will help. This is starting to get into a little bit more advanced, so hang on. But if we do LOL and we type EH instead of EE, we're going to select a piped entity here. Okay, so I'm going to actually click on the pipe transition point itself. And now I get to put an arrow point to it. Okay, so here's my little leader. If I haven't defined a text style in this drawing yet for that leader type, it'll prompt me for it. So I'm just going to say okay to this. Now I can drop in this label. This is the little handle ID. I guess that's the right term, Jer? Handle ID? Maybe? Entity ID?
It's just called a handle.
The handle. I'm learning my code. Um, for that pipe transition point. So every single thing, and I'm just going to do hit enter to repeat the command. And I'll click on this guy and call him out. That's his handle. I'm going to click on this pipe coming into the pipe transition point. We'll point to him. I will click on this pipe because he's got a handle. I will click on this pipe because he's got a handle. And of course, our hatches have handles. Okay. All of these little pieces are really, really important to understand for what I'm gonna show you here. Okay. So the system's actually looking at all of these different pieces of data and it's cross-checking to say, okay, is this pipe transition point, is it looking for this hatch and is it looking to be connected to a pipe? And what about this pipe transition point? Is he in the hatch? So I'm going to now use the LOLEE command and I want to click on the pipe transition point in the area that's having an issue. Like what is he looking at? Okay. So I'll go ahead and click on that pipe transition point. And our focus is actually on the last little bit of information here. Okay. And I can see that it's looking at BD. And if we see in our little words here, our little callouts, well, BD is this hatch. Why is it looking at that hatch? Okay. And it's looking for 1111, which is this piece of pipe. Okay. And it's looking at 1110, which is this piece of pipe. Okay. And it's looking for 1112, this piece of pipe. So it's actually connected everywhere, but it's looking at this hatch. Why? Well, let's actually double check this pipe transition point as well. And it looks like he literally has 112. He's not even looking at a hatch. There's no BD in here at all. So here's our issue. If you were to select this boundary line of this hatch, it's curved. The system has to be decurved, or it has to look at a decurved polyline. It cannot have curves in it. And if you were to actually take this guy and remove or convert that arc to a line, look at where that hatch actually falls. It falls under that pipe transition point right there. And it does not fall under this guy here. So we can actually, if we wanted to just quickly, crudely put it back, we can decurve that guy and get him back to where he is at. And if we were to verify the system again, and I should note, as we look at complexity of plans, verify, you should always try to zoom extents on what you're doing. If you're too far in and you try to run verify, the system is zooming in and out and in and out, taking a lot longer. Um, Also depends on if you got things clear out in space. So clean up your zoom extents to make sure that it's not going so far out. Um, but let's see here. It has still captured that area. And I think that is because this hatch, why would it still be catching that, Jer? The boundary,
Did you wait? You ran verify again?
I did run verify again. And I wonder if I have to, oh, you know what I have to do? Um, I've noticed this on a few of these areas that this hatch, like it basically needs to be placed.
Yeah,
Again,
it should just be verified.
yeah. All right, we'll try it one more time. But I've noticed a couple of those areas that need just a new hatch placed on it, and it picks it up. But let's try it out. All right. While this is going, what's our next question as we get
Oh,
going?
next we got well, we can see here. We still got another drip one, but then we also have one on just showing the difference between grouping and individual nozzles for
Okay.
sprays.
Okay. All right. So that did it had you had to run it twice. There you go. So it picked it up now. So he's now fixed because we got uh, that curve out of the way. So even though this one says that it's not piped, it's because this guy behind it is actually over in his area. So it's just barely made it. And it looks at the insertion point of that pipe transition point. So you can see that he was unlucky and he just got thrown into that guy because of that curve. So fix those curves and decurve those guys in, and you will be able to fix that issue. So what was the other drip question?
Um, let's see. Well, easy one enough, but Andrew asks if there's a way to calculate the total demand of a drip zone so that so does that if you increase or decrease the size of the drip zone, does that impact its demand? So I'm assuming he means just simply a drip line area and make it larger or smaller and see that it has a larger or smaller flow.
Gotcha. Yeah. So in that, we could obviously see it a couple ways. I think this is a good time to also show the power of our circuiting tools. Being able to actually throw in a zone around an area and see what that flow is before we, get into all of the piping. But to go, okay, man, that was a little bit too much. And I'm going to show off another fun tool because I really like it. But um, P hatch. This is in a lot of our different drop downs of tools. But paint hatch, if I click on a hatch, it'll give me a bunch of brushes, and I can pick from these brushes. And if I were to use these keyboard commands, I can add and subtract stuff out. So maybe I had a little utility box that needed to go in right here. I could go into subtract mode and make sure I'm on an edge, but go ahead and paint him in. I can decrease my brush size and I can rotate and I can do whatever I needed to do in this little tool, which is really fun to use. But maybe that was what I needed to do in this plan was take out that. Well, as soon as I hit refresh on the circuit, it will update the flows accordingly. So the drip is calculating those changes right off the bat. What else?
Sweet. And then next was the grouping option for
Oh,
sprays on the schedule.
yeah. Okay. So let's go into, we've got quite a few sprays in here. Um, So let's go ahead and run a schedule. So in the sprays, you've got your group or by nozzle, and obviously group is going to be a nice condensed deal. I'll go ahead and do it on this work area here. Go look through the plan. So there's the nice condensed set of sprays to say, here's all the adjustables that I'm using, and here are all of the flood bubblers that I'm using in the plan, kind of a thing. So, yeah, just do the by group option. And if you want to see them all quantities per arc and nozzle and radius, you would do by nozzle.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Well, we are out of questions,
Oh,
so we
sweet.
still have a little bit of time, people, if you have any remaining things. The one I can think of is maybe a little polydivide or polyoptimize, maybe. What do you think?
Yeah, we can do that. So on the so a couple different things, right? So if we're looking at it from a drip perspective, that's probably one of the most common times that you would use it is trying to split a larger flow area. So maybe I did an edit equipment on him and saw, oh, he's 8 GPM. Maybe I want to stick within 4 GPM or something like that per zone. Or maybe it was that we had full. Uh, let's get my. I'm gonna just undo that thing back to that spot. Maybe I had the full amount of that flow in here. So now I had 12. So maybe I did want it down into the 6 range. Um, Polydivide is a really cool tool to be able to cut stuff. Now, we are definitely limited on what CAD can analyze shape wise and geometry wise. So you gotta bear with it as far as understanding what it's trying to do and how it's trying to cut if you got some really odd shapes. But if we were to select this hatch, I can first of all see my total square footages and my total flows here. And if I wanted to split it into an exact 2 pieces or 3 or 4, maybe I wanted to split this into multiple zones, I could do that. Just know that the more segments that you go into, you're going to run the risk of it not or intersecting with a geometry that it can't take that little piece and subdivide it. But I really like the along the specified segment. So if I just know that I want to cut it, um, you know, loosely in half, I can take this guy, say okay, and the cross angle that I'm going to do is just a pick 2 points kind of a thing, and preferably not clicking on an item, but you know, clicking outside and then over. So if I wanted to, split them to right here, it would cut it exactly into that position. So now I've got 2 zones that I can maybe split half on one zone, half on another zone, kind of a thing. So there's that one. It's actually really really neat, and it works on hatches and on let's see where are we at, and on polylines. So if I didn't have, let's say I had this little area here, and let's get a boundary for this guy. Maybe I had this little guy. Oh, he's got some weird things, so I'm sure that'll. Let's see if we can break it. We'll do polydivide on this guy, and I want to split it into 10 equal sections. And I want to run it, the sections to go horizontally across this way. Ooh, that's fun. Look at that.
What
That's what
did you
these things are
do?
for. I don't know.
What did you
Told
do?
you.
Well, all
I
right. Well, we're
broke it.
getting some other questions, so
Okay.
maybe we'll have to divert.
All right. Dang it. Okay, let's go.
Um, if you go back to that schedule that has the sprays,
Uh-huh.
um, Scott clarified he was hoping to have a single line for all 1804s. instead of having them divided by the 15 series, the 12 series, the adjustables. And there's just not the room there. Scott asked for that. As you can see there, there's potentially, 7 of them. And so
Uh-huh.
that's a fixed block. I guess what he's after is he wants it to just pick up only the nozzles that are used and somehow place them all in just that one line. And that's intriguing. I just don't know how we pull that off. I know someone else had mentioned that they only want to see the symbols that are used in the plan, but not
Hmm.
use the by nozzle option.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I just don't have a thought. Do you have other than,
Well,
hmm,
so I think it maybe warrants just explaining what the system has to do or how it's pulling these, because all of these schedule blocks that you see are designated to the nozzles that group themselves together. So they are pre-made block sets that are assigned in data that way. So to have it on the fly create a unique schedule symbol set, I think is where it starts to get a little tricky, because all of the data is assigned to a specific symbol and nozzle already. And so to break that apart and not have it look at that one thing that it's assigned to and somehow group them together based on their sizes and shapes and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm at a loss at what to do. Um, but intriguing. It's
hmm
noted for sure.
for sure. Um, let's see. And well, I think we'll be able to do these last 2 questions. Robert's question is going to be about regarding pipe. As
Okay.
I understand this, he wants the tree lines and the shrub lines um, separated in the schedule.
Um,
So I'm assuming that, and I've seen that before, where they want a different class of pipe going to the trees versus going to the shrubs. And
yeah.
so, how would they do that?
Yeah, so it sounds like um maybe they are already setting up different classes of pipe. So in our pipe data, you're welcome to set, this guy to be your turf laterals. And then under this guy here, you can do a different class of pipe, or technically the same class of pipe. It doesn't matter. And call this one tree laterals. Um, However, if you set them up in sequential order here and you do change the sizes, the system does see this as, oh, okay, if I don't have the smaller size in this list that I want, I'm going to auto shift it over there. So it is wise to actually skip, if you can, to say, all right, I'm going to skip that group and I'm going to start it here. So there's a break in between each class, so that now this is um my thing here, my class for that guy, and then I skip it for my shrubs. Because every one of these does get their own specific line type here. So if you're making your own line type and you're making it say the word tree in that line type, um, the same thing with the symbols here is that these little representations of the symbol is a block. So I'm going to explode this so you can see that is a block. And if I look at its properties, he's called LAFX pipe main. And if I had a second class used, it would be pipe main type 2. And these are different blocks that the system uses, and those are in your land effects blocks folder that you could customize to match the line type that you wanted it to show, and they would pull in appropriately. I think that's probably what you're referring to.
That sounds good. And I think we have one last question. That'll be great. Um, Actually, well, Christian then jumped in also wanting to know where we divided up that polyline, and that was our
Oh,
polydivide.
okay. I'll show that.
Also, probably best just make sure how you have the most up-to-date ribbon, and that way you will have every ribbon button. So
Okay.
if you, right there, it does say what ribbon version it is. So you can just click that to update it. If your ribbon doesn't even say a ribbon version, then it's much older than that. But so you can always just click on that and see if you have the most recent ribbon, and if not, go ahead and get it. And that will give you the tools. But that tool was specifically the poly divide. Um, but we do have one last question we can do real quick, and just Martha just mentioned problems with when someone changes the symbols for spray heads,
Yep.
and those sorts of issues. And so if you want to maybe just very quickly, because we're already just
Yeah.
running over, but there's a couple comments I'm sure you can have on changing symbols.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, um, before you do your whole plan, get the symbols approved so that you do not switch them at the very end. Because depending, and this is where, um, oh man, I wish we're gonna have to do a part two because I didn't even get into any of the other sizing stuff. But symbols with attributes versus no attributes versus where those attributes reside on the actual symbol themselves. All those things get defined into a CAD file, right? Those are just blocks, they're just textiles, they're just attributes, but they do get defined in the drawing, and it's really, really hard to untangle those if and it is preventable. And if we kind of take the time to set up our standards from the right from the beginning, and that's why I say, if I've got this project with all of my different pieces of equipment, I want to run, a schedule, and I want to do entire palette, and I just want to literally run a giant list of everything, because it's going to list out all of the symbols that I'm using. Am I okay with that? Is that the style that I want? Once I know that, then obviously I can start placing. The other thing to remember, real quick on that, is your preference set is the heart of how these symbols are going to be inserted in and at what scale. So as we are doing a design, we need to know how we're setting up our sheet, because that absolutely impacts the size at which these symbols come in. So if we are making them 80% of our sort of standard default size, and then somebody comes in here and changes that, and we insert those, now they're coming in at a different size, and now we got to figure out, which one's correct, and how to fix that. So there's that part that we need to make sure that it stays kind of solid. We set those, we set them up, we test it, and then we lock it down. We don't change from that. But as far as looking at, maybe somebody changed the symbol style on you on the plan. Maybe it was that they actually accidentally deleted this piece of equipment out of the list. Instead of properly hitting replace and picking a new something, they just simply deleted it out of the plan. So we'll just go ahead and say delete. And they added it back fresh. We'll just add this guy really quick. But what they did when they added it back fresh is they actually picked a completely different symbol style. Well, they've now just kind of broken the link of, okay, this symbol is in here. And if I highlight him, he should. Oh, I don't have any of those in the plan actually. So that one's just totally not even there anymore. And now I'm kind of broken. I don't know what he is. I can look at him. I can get him added back to the plan, but now I've got multiple types in the plan, kind of a thing. It's just better if you use that replace tool to swap things out. but you should be able to edit that and click on the symbol style and pick different shape. And if that system, if the stuff is in the drawing, or if that equipment is properly set in the drawing, it will update the symbol automatically on the fly. But if they simply just deleted it out, picked a new different style, and placed it, now you got two different defined blocks in the drawing. Now you've got to purge one of those out so that it takes hold of the fresh one. I know that was rushed, but hopefully
I
that.
think that was great. And on that note, we have filled our hour. I hope you guys got your questions answered to your satisfaction. Always feel free to email us with any more ideas, if you just even letting us know if you like this format of webinar. It'd be really nice to hear some feedback on that as we plan our future webinars. Beyond that, everyone, please have a great and safe and wonderful weekend, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, guys.